Welcome to U.S. Media Power.
Iranian authorities have announced their intent to pursue swift trials and punitive measures against individuals detained in nationwide protests, despite warnings from U.S. President Donald Trump that executions could trigger very strong action, according to multiple reports from international news agencies and live updates. The unrest in Iran, which began in late December 2025 in response to widespread economic hardship, has evolved into one of the most sustained and deadly waves of domestic protest in the country's recent history. Human rights organizations report that the death toll from the crackdown has risen above 2,500, with thousands more detained by state security forces. Officials from Iran's judiciary, including Chief Justice Ghulam Hossein Mohseni-J, stated this week that legal proceedings for those arrested will be expedited. The comments, widely reported, indicate that trials could be fast-tracked and that capital punishments may be imposed on those found guilty of charges related to their protest involvement. In response to the judiciary's pronouncements, President Trump publicly reiterated that the United States would take decisive measures if Iranian authorities carried out executions against protest detainees. Trump's warnings were issued through official remarks and interviews with news media, in which he described potential U.S. responses to any execution of peaceful demonstrators. The protests erupted across all 31 provinces of Iran amid mounting economic frustration and dissatisfaction with government policy. Demonstrators initially rallied against inflation and the plummeting value of the Iranian rial, but the demonstrations quickly expanded into broader calls for political change and opposition to Iran's clerical leadership. Communications within Iran have been significantly disrupted, including ongoing internet and phone blackouts imposed by authorities. These outages have complicated efforts by international media to independently verify events on the ground. Those satellite internet providers have reportedly offered alternative access in some areas. The Iranian government has framed the protests as acts of terrorism and chaos orchestrated by internal and external enemies. State media portrayals emphasize the role of security services in maintaining order and have characterized demonstrators as violent actors who must be punished under the law. U.S. officials have condemned the violent crackdown and expressed support for the rights of Iranian citizens to demonstrate peacefully. In his publicly released statements, President Trump has urged Iranian protesters to continue their demonstrations and has indicated that help is on its way, though he did not provide specifics on the nature or timing of such assistance. International reaction to the Iranian government's stated plans has been varied. European leaders, including officials from the United Kingdom and European Parliament representatives, have criticized Tehran's response to the protests and called for accountability, including potential sanctions or diplomatic measures aimed at discouraging further violence. The protests have been marked by a series of high-casualty events. Human rights organizations have documented thousands of deaths and a sharp rise in arrests, with some reports estimating that more than 18,000 individuals have been detained nationwide. Rights groups have also received accounts of forced confessions and coerced statements broadcast by state media. One case that has drawn particular international attention involves Irfan Soltani, a 26-year-old protester reportedly sentenced to death by Iranian authorities on charges related to his participation in demonstrations. Rights organizations have raised concerns about the fairness of the legal process, noting that Soltani was reportedly denied access to legal representation and given limited time to see family before the scheduled execution. Iranian officials have not publicly confirmed details of Soltani's case through state media, and independent verification remains difficult due to the communications blackout and restrictions on press access. International advocacy groups describe his case as emblematic of mounting concerns over the Iranian judiciary's handling of protest-related detentions. President Trump's warnings against executions have cited humanitarian considerations and urged Iranian authorities to refrain from capital punishment. In interviews and official statements, Trump said he would consider a range of responses if executions proceeded, though he did not provide a detailed list of specific actions. Iranian authorities, meanwhile, have defended their legal approach, asserting that those detained have engaged in acts that threaten public order and security. Government officials have characterized such actions as criminal offenses that must be addressed through the judicial system, including the use of existing legal penalties. Public funerals have been held in several Iranian cities for those killed in the unrest. Reports indicate that both protesters and members of security forces have died in clashes, with caskets displayed at ceremonies attended by mourners. Coverage of these events by state media underscores the emotional impact of the protests on Iranian society. Iranian state security services have also conducted raids in urban areas in search of banned communications equipment, reflecting ongoing efforts to control information flow and suppress dissent. These raids have included the targeting of homes and private residences, according to external reports. International human rights organizations have issued statements calling for restraint and respect for the rights of demonstrators. Groups such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have documented credible reports of unlawful killings, arbitrary detentions, and potential violations of international law in the context of the protests. As the situation has evolved, associated diplomatic activity has increased. Western governments have summoned Iranian envoys to express concern over violent suppression and to urge adherence to basic civil liberties, including the right to peaceful assembly. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and other regional powers have also monitored developments closely, warning that any military intervention by external powers, including the United States, could have widespread regional implications. These governments have called for diplomatic engagement and restraint in order to avoid escalation. Tensions between Iran and the United States have been heightened by a series of diplomatic moves, including the suspension of meetings and increased rhetoric from both sides. Iranian officials have accused the U.S. of interference in their domestic affairs, while U.S. representatives have highlighted the need for accountability and the protection of human rights. Continued reporting from international agencies indicates that the death toll and number of detentions remain central metrics in assessing the state of unrest, though precise figures are difficult to verify due to restricted access and communications blackouts within Iran. Iranian officials have continued to emphasize that legal proceedings against detained protesters will proceed under existing laws. Statements released by Iran's judiciary indicated that individuals accused of participating in what authorities describe as violent or destabilizing acts will face charges that may carry severe penalties, including capital punishment. Officials said the judiciary would not be influenced by external pressure. State television in Iran has broadcast footage showing courtrooms, detained individuals, and confessions that authorities describe as evidence of criminal activity. Human rights organizations have raised concerns about these broadcasts, stating that confessions may have been obtained under coercion. Iranian officials have denied these allegations, asserting that all judicial procedures are lawful. President Donald Trump has continued to publicly warn Iranian authorities against executing protesters. In remarks delivered during media engagements, Trump stated that executions would cross a very serious line and would prompt a strong response from the United States. He did not specify the form such a response might take. U.S. officials from the State Department reiterated that Washington is monitoring developments closely. Statements emphasized support for the right to peaceful protest and expressed concern over reports of mass detentions and potential executions. Officials said diplomatic and economic tools remain under review. Iran's supreme leader has not delivered a nationally televised address specifically addressing Trump's warnings, though senior Iranian officials have accused the United States of encouraging unrest. Iranian government representatives have stated that foreign governments are attempting to interfere in Iran's internal affairs. The protests have affected major urban centers including Tehran, Mashhad, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Tabriz. Reports indicate that demonstrations have occurred in both large cities and smaller towns. Security forces have deployed riot police and other units to maintain control, according to state media. Internet access within Iran has remained inconsistent. Monitoring groups tracking global connectivity have reported repeated nationwide slowdowns and localized shutdowns. Iranian authorities have acknowledged restrictions, describing them as necessary to maintain public order. International journalists remain largely unable to report freely inside Iran. News organizations rely on videos shared through social media, satellite imagery, and accounts from activists and human rights groups. Verification of incidents continues to be challenging. Human rights organizations have issued updated casualty estimates, though they caution that figures may change as more information becomes available. Reports continue to cite hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries. Iranian officials have not released comprehensive casualty data. Funeral gatherings for those killed during protests have themselves become focal points for renewed demonstrations. Security forces have reportedly dispersed mourners in some instances. State media coverage has framed these gatherings as attempts to provoke further unrest. Iranian authorities have announced arrests of individuals accused of spreading what they describe as misinformation. Charges include collaboration with foreign media and online activism. Government statements emphasize enforcement of national security laws. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for restraint and urged Iran to halt executions related to protest activity. Statements from UN officials emphasize adherence to international human rights obligations. European Union officials have discussed possible responses, including sanctions targeting individuals involved in violent crackdowns. Diplomatic sources indicate that discussions are ongoing among member states. Regional governments have expressed concern about escalation. Officials in neighboring countries have warned that instability in Iran could have broader economic and security implications for the Middle East. Markets have monitored developments due to Iran's role in global energy supply. Analysts note that prolonged unrest could affect oil production and exports, though no major disruptions have been confirmed. Iran's economy has faced pressure from inflation and currency devaluation. Economic grievances are widely cited as a catalyst for the protests, according to analysts and public statements from demonstrators. Iranian officials maintain that reforms must occur through established political processes rather than street protests. Statements emphasize stability and continuity of governance. U.S. lawmakers from both parties have commented publicly on the situation. Some have called for increased pressure on Iran, while others urge diplomatic engagement. Congressional committees have requested briefings from administration officials. Advocacy groups in the Iranian diaspora have organized demonstrations in cities including Washington, New York, London, and Paris. These protests call for international intervention and increased attention to human rights abuses. Iranian embassies abroad have increased security following demonstrations. Diplomatic missions have reported incidents involving protesters gathering outside embassy buildings. Media coverage within Iran continues to emphasize national unity and resistance to foreign influence. State outlets have aired programming supporting security forces and judiciary actions. The Iranian government has stated that order has been restored in several areas, though sporadic protests continue. Security deployments remain in place in key locations. As of the latest updates, no executions directly tied to the recent protests have been independently confirmed. Human rights organizations continue to warn that executions may be imminent based on judicial statements. U.S. officials have reiterated that any execution of protesters would significantly affect bilateral relations. Diplomatic channels remain active, though tensions remain high. The situation remains fluid as protests, arrests, and legal proceedings continue. International observers say developments over the coming days will be critical in determining the trajectory of the unrest.